not in the more for me.
Yeah. There you go. We're recording. And yeah, so we'll be recording the session. If you have any announcements, so if you have anything you'd like to share with the community, anything that content people or UX people might be interested in, that could be a job opportunity, an event you're running yourself, or any other kind of announcement, please feel free to do that at the end. So we'll have about 5 minutes at the end for announcements. We also have a survey that we're running around what people would like to get from the meetup, just to get a bit more of an understanding of how we can keep creating a meetup that people are interested in and that meets your needs. So one of my colleagues is going to be dropping a link into the chat for that survey. If you could fill that out, we'd be really grateful, whether you're a first timer or a regular. And so, yeah, so that's all my intro. I'm really excited to introduce Sophia, for those of you who haven't met her before. So Sophia Prater is the founder of an agency called Rewired UX, and she's best known as really the inventor and the chief evangelist for object-oriented UX. So I first heard of object-oriented UX probably about 2 years ago, and I immediately started to see connections with a lot of the work that I was doing and that we do at Weave around things like information architecture, content modeling, but also content design. So thinking about things like users' mental models, how people actually understand the world and piece it together. And OOUX really gives us a great set of tools for building connections between those different pieces of work, so that the more structural sides of content really reflect and are built with an understanding of the way our users are sort of thinking and approaching the world. So I really got into OOUX to the point where last year I went through Sophia's certification course. So I'm now a certified OOUX strategist. Got the postcard to prove it. And yeah, no secret that we've and my colleagues at Weave are at various stages on their OUX journey as well. So no secret that we're big fans. But rather than keep gushing about OUX and how wonderful it is, it's probably better that I hand over to Sophia. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Sophia, when you're ready, take it away.
Hi. Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to talk to all of you content pros and talked about OUX and how OUX can support you in your practice and make life more fun and easier and less stressful and more effective and all of the things. Sounds like a silver bullet, but it is strangely not too much to ask for. So let me do the Zoom wrangling fun game where I can share my screen. I got stuff for y'all. And I say y'all, I'm from Georgia, if you can't tell. I'm from the South, the southern corner, right outside of Atlanta. And so we'll see how much my southern accent will come out. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about 8 strategies to expand your capacity for complexity because things are just getting more and more complex. And we're going to do that with the magic of object-oriented UX. So this presentation is hot off the presses. You might see a few, I think I've gotten most of my typos out and there might be some strange animations or something. So bear with me. Y'all are the second group of people that I've done this for. So this is a brand new presentation. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. This is actually not a full presentation. There's more. Okay, but I'm going to show you how to get the whole thing. So I am a UX consultant and a coach. I have 16 years of experience in UX. I got started right when the iPhone came out. So my first project, my title was actually UE designer, not UX designer. Accenture, my first employer, was calling us UE analysts. And my very first project was on a B2B insurance app. Okay, I was in my mid-20s. I barely understood my own insurance or what insurance was or how it worked. And they just plop me in and they say, okay, can we get some wireframes by Friday? Here's a big stack of requirements, and here's some designs that a UX designer 6 months ago, who's not here anymore, they did. Take it and run with it, and let's see what you got on Friday. So basically, I started at a really good time but also when people really didn't understand UX. And strangely, I feel like some of the same things are happening today. But basically, my the first 5 years of my UX career really sucked. I was overwhelmed with complexity. I had all these kind of gotchas late in the game, especially with the complexity of B2B insurance. And then I would create some wireframes and I would show them to the stakeholders and the subject matter experts, and they'd be like, "Eh, not quite. Can you move this over here? Can you move this over here? And actually, that's not going to work with this business rule that we never told you about because we didn't think to tell you about it because we're just thinking about it now that we're looking at your UI, and that's actually not going to work." And they just expected me to kind of like UX fairy dust the screen design to deal with all that complexity. And this was actually really time consuming too. This was like basically showing them wireframes to find the gotchas and have like a terrible lack of cross-functional collaboration. And really, I also had like this lack of confidence in my design decisions. Like, is this better? I hope this is better. I think this is better, but is it actually better? And so this really came, this was really like under a microscope in that very first project when I was really new and I was just plopped into all that complexity. But this was repeated everywhere I went. Basically, I worked at 5 different places in 5 years. Chasing I was chasing something that I got glimmers of in the beginning of that first project where I felt like I was actually absorbing the complexity and helping the entire team get on the same page. There was these moments where I would be at the whiteboard and I would look over at everybody and everybody's head was nodding and they'd be like, "Yeah, that." And I'd be making like these like UI sketches, but like kind of boxes and arrows, and things would kind of click into place. And those little moments were so few and far between, but I was like, I want more of that. Like this can be really, really fun. So I was jumping from place to place to place, not really finding it. Then I ended up at CNN in 2012 and I got put on a project. It was the 2012 election results. And I won't go into the whole story. I talk about it kind of everywhere on the internet because it was so pivotal for me. But this was the very first responsive design that I worked on. It was also the very first responsive design that anybody on the team had worked on, developers included, writers included, everybody included. Nobody had ever done anything with responsive design. So we didn't really know what we were doing. And basically, what happened is I had very little time. It was also very complicated. It was complex data visualization that they were wanting to do responsive. Like, of all the things to do responsive for the very first time on CNN, the election results, like in retrospect, like that's wild that that was the decision that was made because it was complex data viz. And I was having to see, like, how is it going to move across all of these screens? But basically, what I learned through that project, this responsive design project, was a catalyst to make me think in systems instead of pages. All right. And I changed so many ways that I worked. I basically really like internalized this idea of the fewer moving parts, the less likely something is to break. Um, and I did a few things that worked really, really well. And I realized that those things that worked really well, I could have been doing the entire time of my career, just responsive design and this like weird crucible that I was put in just forced the issue, but I was like, "Whoa, I could have been using all of these tactics all along, and I think I'm onto something." And I got asked to do a case study at a big conference. I did a talk on it. The talk went well. I started teaching my methods. And then through teaching those methods, the methods got better. And then I started using them then I'd go teach it. And then I'd teach and I'd learn and I'd teach and I'd practice it. And I'd go back and I'd teach it again. And one of my mantras is teach what you need to learn. So the process started evolving. I naturally love teaching. So I kept like saying, yeah, I'll run a workshop on this. Yeah, I'll do a talk on this. This is cool. I want to share it. But the more I shared it to different audiences in different contexts in different companies, the more the process grew. And that's basically been the last decade plus of me going and teaching it and refining it and playing with it and making it better and better and better and better. And that's what I want to give to you today. So I've run over 100 workshops in object-oriented UX. I lost count. We're in triple digits now. I've refined it, improved it with over 50 different clients across all the industries, all of them, every single one of them. Um, even UFO research. And now I don't do, the only consulting that I do is these high value 1 week orca sprints that I will tell you, I am able to now charge multiple five figures for a 1 week orca sprint because it is that valuable and companies want to pay for it. So now I also have 200 plus certified OUX strategists, Angus being one of them. And maybe some of y'all will join us in the fall, go back to school and get yourself certified in OUX if this stuff resonates with you. So, hello, fellow word nerds. It is nice to meet you. I am a UX designer. I realize that I'm talking to a bunch of content professionals, but I do want to tell you about 1/3 of the people I have in my program have a content background. So as we go through this, I'm going to speak to how like this might fit in with your content practice, like a little bit, but y'all are going to know best. You're going to look at this and you're going to say, this is how it's going to fit in. All right. Because I'm coming from the user experience side and y'all will be able to take it and run with it. The main thing that I think, Angus, you can jump in, correct me if I'm wrong, that content pros love about OUX is it brings content design in early and helps content design and information architecture and the structure of user experience all come together early in the process. So you're not, in UX, what we end up, what we hate doing is we hate pixel pushing, right? I know what y'all's version of pixel pushing is, right? Going in and editing the lorem ipsum, or like, can you do the content design for this one little error message, and you don't understand anything else about the page? Like, just do this one little myopic thing, and you're not brought in at the system level. That is what this helps with, bringing y'all in at the system level. Okay. So here's just a few. We got Angus in here, just a few testimonials here from content strategists. Okay. And I bring this in a little bit to brag because it's so freaking exciting, the results that people get, but I think it's so powerful for you to hear it in their words, for you to know what is possible. A new level of clarity and rigor, an incredibly valuable process. My skills and confidence bloomed. I'm already seeing how this approach is making me a better content designer. And who doesn't want a secret weapon? Everybody wants a secret weapon. Okay, so what are we going to do in around 45 minutes? 8 strategies. That seems like a lot. So I'm going to be talking about these 5, what I call these 5 core level ups that I think are so important from a user experience perspective and a product design perspective overall. Okay, but we're really going to be focusing on just 2. Okay, so we're focusing on complexity processing and what I call X-ray UX. All right, these other 3, I'm going to let you know about an opportunity. I'm doing the long version of this talk twice on Thursday. Okay, OUX.com/level up. You can go, you can register right now, but I'm going to give you the link at the end. That will give you the whole version. We're getting an abbreviated version because we don't have enough time to go over it. So I'm going to go over like the highlights of complexity processing and X-ray UX. And we're going to be looking at the ORCA process. O's, R's, C's, and A's. I'm going to tell you all about the ORCA process. And I'm going to give you my very top strategy for the ORCA process when it comes to expanding your capacity for complexity and making the invisible parts of user experience and product design visible. This is where so much of the value lies, is in the invisible part of the process. And when it's invisible, the business doesn't really appreciate it, right? So we need to make it visible. And that's what X-ray UX is all about. Okay, so these core level ups, I'm going to talk through these really quickly. Complexity processing is just basically like firing on all cylinders. How cool to know or to think that like you have untapped capacity. Like you have cylinders that you're not even firing on, all right? And that just some better tools can actually help you feel smarter because you can just take in more, you can understand faster just by changing a few things that we're going to talk about. When I say bomb diffusing, I mean surfacing those difficult questions early on. Okay, surfacing those things that like they're going to be painful, they're going to be gotchas, you're going to step on them. Why not go ahead and talk about them now and not later in the game? Asking those difficult questions, or what I sometimes call even the $1,000,000 questions, the questions that can save so much money if you ask them earlier on. Being that person is so valuable. Skipping over X-ray UX, we're going to come back to that. Creating the loop. What I'm talking about here is wrangling complexity collaboratively into this user-centered design. So when we often, I don't know, if y'all ever feel like this, but in the UX design world, we often feel like we're like a little out of the loop, or we're like elbowing our way for a seat at the table. Like, hey, we're important too. Can we be involved in this conversation? Can we get invited to this meeting? This is all about creating our own damn loop, creating our own effing table. Okay, where the amazing conversations happen, where it is inclusive, it is exciting, it is fun, and it is really effective. And then everybody else wants to come play at our table. So we don't have to elbow our way into this table. Say, hey, good conversations are happening over here. Y'all are all invited. Come on in. It's really powerful. And then these ancient truths, can we break down what it means to be intuitive? Yes, we can. All right. Actually, how does the human brain work? How can we create screens? There's nothing intuitive about screens. We did not evolve with screens. All right. We evolved with physical objects that we touch and we manipulate. All right. How can we make our screen design work with our caveman brains and our visual cortex back here? And finally, X-ray UX. Okay, this is all about, like I said, making that invisible part visible. And that invisible part really lies in the middle of the double diamond process. Okay. So if you look at the double diamond process, okay, we're really pretty good on research and, if we get money to do it, we're pretty good. We know how to do that. And design, we're pretty good at knowing how to do that. I think from the perspective of our maturity as an industry, we're pretty mature in these areas. But there's this weak spot right here in the middle. What's going on here? When you go from research into then all of a sudden we're going to start making some screens and we're going to design some stuff. But what happens here in the middle? And so many OUXers end up saying, it's like the third diamond, that it creates this glue in between this so that you can go and you can say, let's put Orca in the middle. I'm going to tell you what Orca is in a second. And then Orca becomes a gauntlet. All right. This process that I'm going to talk to you about, it becomes a gauntlet to get to design. And it shows you, because you're getting those $1,000,000 questions, because you're raising all the assumptions and you're getting that X-ray vision, you can recognize the stuff that you don't know. All the unknown unknowns come to the surface, which can beautifully pop you back to research and get buy-in for research. All right. So even your stakeholders in the business are saying, ooh, yeah, that is a high risk assumption. Maybe we should get a little bit more research. Maybe we have some money for a couple more days of talking to people and figuring stuff out. Okay. So that when you actually get to design, you're only getting to design on the stuff that you're really, really sure about. Or you say, okay, it's a low risk assumption. We're going to move forward with that. But you're doing it with eyes wide open. So it creates this beautiful loop of getting us say like, okay, we're not quite ready. It's a filter almost. Okay, so object-oriented UX, what is that? This is just a philosophy that says, you know what? People think in objects. And I've got research on that. We're not going to get into this presentation, but if you look over in Medium, I've got some articles on the actual research here and how our brains work, how our visual cortex works, even for those of us that have sighting impairments. Yes, visual cortex is doing a lot of our understanding. What are the objects? Where are the objects? Where are they in space? And because we build our understanding through objects, we need consistent and recognizable objects to understand an environment or a product. Okay. That's all OAUX is saying. Like, hey, nouns matter too, not just the verbs. And nouns matter a whole lot. They're actually a foundation of understanding. All right, so as an OUXer, we basically deliberately align our software to the user's real-world mental model of these concrete and defined objects. So these really abstract digital worlds can be as naturally intuitive as possible, okay? And OUX is this secret weapon for breaking down complexity, asking these high-dollar questions, digging below the surface, creating that shared language, and aligning our software to how perception works, okay? It's a beautiful thing. So as OUXers, we answer these questions before we start designing any screens. What are the objects in the user's mental model? What are the objects' relationships to each other? How do they connect to each other in context? What calls to action do objects offer users? Okay, what are their affordances? And what attributes make up those objects? What is their chemical makeup? All right. This is where content designers get really excited. I mean, it's all hopefully really exciting, but when you think about the attributes, okay, how do we actually break down each of these objects into structured content and data? Yeah. So this becomes maybe your favorite new acronym in the whole wide world, ORCA, Object Relationships, CTAs, and Attributes. So let's take a little walk through ORCA. So objects are these archetypical real world concepts. So they have value to the users. Okay. This is not the little buttons. We're not talking components here. We are talking concepts that usually have a corollary to the real world, people, places, and things. So let's go back to that B2B insurance app. So we're going to go down memory lane. We're going to imagine we're going to go visit Sophia back in 2010 or 2009. I don't even remember, working at Blue Cross Blue Shield, totally overwhelmed by complexity. Now, what if she had had the ORCA process to understand the complexity of B2B insurance? So, some examples of objects, I would have been honing in on these things: claim, plan, package, employee, company. Those are your things, okay? They are represented in the digital space, but they're not the buttons. They're not the navigation. They're not the sections, all right? They're the actual things that have a corollary to the real world. And why? Why do we need to define these things? Well, people think in objects. They do. They do. And if you don't get clear on them, they will never be clear to your users. So if you internally don't understand your objects and as a team have agreements on what these things are, how are you going to make it clear to your users? And if they go into an environment, just imagine going into any environment where you can't recognize what the things are. That's scary. It feels dangerous, and you don't know how to operate in that space. All right. That's what our brain does. As soon as we go into a space, we're like, where's all the stuff? Okay, now I can move around and I know what I can do, what I can touch and what I can't touch, and what's available to me and what's not. Okay, relationships, the R of ORCA. All right, this is the connections between two objects in a given context or domain. Connections might be different in different contexts. And in OAUX, we define the cardinality when describing relationships. I'm not going to get too much into cardinality. It's hard to define, but there's videos out there. I teach it in my trainings, but I didn't make up cardinality or anything. But here's some examples. Examples help. So we might say a package has one-to-many plans, while a plan always has a one parent package. And plans have one-to-many employees that are on that plan, and an employee has 0-to-1 plans that they are subscribed to. Okay, so now I can see how these things start fitting together, and I actually start getting a definition of these things. So there's two main reasons we love to define the relationships in the ORCA process. One, it helps us figure out what these things are because we're defining them in context through the relationships. We can write a definition, but actually saying how it connects to the other things and how they can anchor into each other. All right, that's going to really help us define the things. And then number two, the relationships pave the way for the most intuitive navigation that you could create. All right. If I'm on an employee, I really want to be able to navigate to their current plan. And if I'm on the plan, I want to go up to the parent package. If I'm on the package, all right, let me see all the plans that are derived from that package. Okay. Cool. All right, calls to action. We put calls to action on green for go. Color coding is very important in ORCA. Do not go off script with this color coding. Call to action is just the affordances. What does an object offer up to the user? What are the handles? What are the buttons on this object? What can I do to this thing? All right. So task flows start with the CTA, but you can think, is this the thing that like the object is saying, hey, they're calling the user. You can do this. You can do this to me. This is stuff that you can do. So for example, a package, I could maybe create it, customize it, approve it, test it for compliance or duplicate it. Or you might even be thinking, well, what about different users, different roles? Yeah, so we get into roles as soon as possible in the ORCA process. Not only what can people do to this object, but who can do it. And why? Oh my gosh, this is amazing to get the full scope on functionality, rooted in clear objects. All right, so we can actually do a functionality audit by saying, okay, here's what our objects are. Here's the objects in scope. What do people do to those objects? What is actually in scope? And scope is always such a big headache. And attaching CTAs to objects, we basically get direct manipulation, which is going to be the most intuitive way for users to interact with something. If I want to do something to something, I'm going to reach out and touch it. I'm going to click it. Rage click it. I'm not going to expect the button to be over here. We often put a button over here, and then the thing is over here. Put the button on the thing. Okay, finally, attributes. These are the elements that make up the structure. You might know them as properties, or even you could even think about them a little bit like fields. They're a bit of a corollary to fields, but you don't always have a field for every attribute. In OAUX, we distinguish between core content, which we put on yellow, and metadata on pink. I'm not going to get into the difference of those, but maybe I will in a little bit. We'll see if we have time. So examples we have, like for a package, I can have effective date, unique ID, enrollment start date, enrollment end date, and probably like 30 other things, if not more. Why? Attributes house and structure all the relevant information about the objects at an atomic level. Okay. And that metadata is going to give you the UI, or going to allow for the UI for sorting and filtering and grouping when you have lists of these objects. So if I have hundreds or thousands of packages in this B2B insurance app, how do I sort and filter and group them? Can I show the ones that have the most recent effective date at the top? Okay, that's why I want to structure this so clearly. All right. So what I want you to know here, this is very important, is the Orca process is not just a framework. Your system has an Orca, like whatever you're working on, like it has it. It exists. It has objects, relationships, CTAs, and attributes, okay? And the health of your Orca directly impacts the health of your UX. Okay. Now, the Orca process is a professional tool designed to help you take care of your system's Orca. Okay. And if you're not taking care of it, if you're like not paying attention to it, it's probably sad and weak and neglected. All right. And that will impact the user experience. So finally, the health of a system's Orca. Oh, is it shaky? Is it sad? It is a core responsibility of a UX product or content designer. Okay. I almost think this can be a full-time job for people that this really clicks for. I say every system has an Orca. Every system needs someone or a team of people taking care of it. And I think at least one person on a robust product should be full-time on taking care of the system's Orca and making sure it is strong and watered and fed and growing and robust and providing that nice skeleton for everything else you want to do in your system, all the innovation that's coming down the line. Okay, so let's get into these strategies. So we started at like 6:15, 6:20, right? We're ending at, oh, I have
9:15.
at least, okay,
We've got,
I'm
yeah,
good.
you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, so complexity processing like a pro. Let's talk about it. So objects, these are your anchors of understanding. All right, so if you are not understanding something, okay, something feels confusing, often we just get kind of overwhelmed and we're like, oh God, this is so confusing. And we can check out. But likely you are not confused by the verbs or the adjectives. You're probably confused by the nouns. This is what is likely, in 99 out of 100 times, this is what is gumming up your gears in processing understanding. So we just shut down. We don't even realize it. We're like, oh, this is so confusing. But if we can just identify, oh, that's a noun that I don't understand this context, let me just go get a definition, then the pieces start to click together. Okay. So look for those WTF nouns, define those, and then you're going to be magically unblocked. You're probably not confused by the verbs or the adjectives. All right. So an example here on our B2B, let's talk to Mark, the stakeholder at this B2B insurance company. It says, so for the dashboard, I think it's critical that we surface the right data at the right time. Predictive insights, eligibility discrepancies, contribution deltas, those need to be front and center, and needs to allow for drill downs into plan specifics, but without overwhelming the user. Right? We've all heard stuff like this before. And if I had heard this back in 2009, I probably just was like shutting down. Like, this is just too confusing. I don't get it. I have a headache. This is not fun. Right? But now I'd be like, ooh, eligibility discrepancy, contribution deltas. Let me just Google that real quick. What are those? Can I figure that out? Oh, okay. It's the same thing as an eligibility error. It's actually not that confusing. It's just when an employee gets mismatched with their plan benefits. So somebody that like isn't eligible gets stuff that they're eligible for, or vice versa. And then this contribution delta is just a plan change. It's just a history line item in a plan change. It's just a fancy word. It's actually not that scary. So it's a recorded history of a plan change that just highlights the difference. Like somebody went from like $100 to $120. So the delta is 20 bucks. Okay, not so scary. And then I might even say like, okay, or do you always call them contribution deltas? Do you ever call them plan changes? And we can have a conversation about it. I can always just ask, or I can just like see if I can figure out some of those WTF nouns that just start letting them pop out to you. All right. So instead of being like, oh, gross. And people have said to me before that they start like getting a little bit of synesthesia in OAUX. You start listening differently and you're like, blue, yellow, green, pink, as you're just listening to a stakeholder talk about something complicated. How cool is that? So you could be like, oh, blue, ooh, blue thing that I actually don't know what that is. Let me dig into that. Okay, relationships. So if objects are your anchors of understanding, relationships are connecting those anchors, solidifying that understanding. You're defining it even further in context. So what you want to do is you want to start mapping those relationships. You just want to get really good at connecting the dots to further define things in context, okay? So you might get an example, for example, something like this. So we're talking about companies with multiple subsidies. We're really dealing with this layered hierarchy that introduces a lot of variability in benefit structures. Each subsidy could operate under distinct governance models and localized regulatory frameworks. So the system needs to be able to segment benefit packages at a granular level, allowing for hyper-specific configurations. Okay, what all this guy is saying is this. All right. So maybe this is in an email or you're hearing it and you're whiteboarding and you're like, okay, there's companies and then there's branches. All right. Subsidiaries, fancy word. There's branches of the companies. And then you have the master package and you have branch packages. And there's actually a whole lot of complexity right here. And I can even hone in on that and be like, all right, companies, branches, cool. But what kind of like inheritance or like trickle down effect is happening between a master package and a branch package? Like if the master package changes, do we have stuff that like goes and propagates to all the branch packages? How do those kind of like stay in? So I could ask like amazing questions just about the relationships here. But once I get really good at this and I can just be like, "Meh, objects, and now I can start mapping all the relationships, things become a whole lot more simple and easier to understand. And I can actually check my understanding too and be like, is this what you're talking about? Is this true? Cool. All right, calls to action. All right. So, what we can do with calls to action is now that we have really solid objects, they're connected to each other. We have kind of like a model of this thing. We can now connect our calls to action, our features and our flows, we can connect them to solid objects. All right. So, things that like the verbs are actually usually pretty abstract. And we have these use cases, and it turns into a bowl of spaghetti with all the flows and things and people crossing over and edge cases and everything, we can anchor them back into our really nice solid objects. So what you want to do is you want to look for the verbs that nod to functionality and then connect those to objects and really be conscientious about which objects go with which nouns because sometimes that's actually not clear. So I might get something like this about the user being able to dynamically generate forms and drag and drop elements. And like, what is an element? To set up benefit packages, insurance admins will need full control. They'll be setting up and managing these packages. Blah, 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 blah. You can read the rest. Okay, so now I can start saying, all right, he's talking about plans and packages and products and forms. Okay, what are we like? What are we enrolling in a plan and we customize a product? And I can start playing around with this. All right. And I can even realize actually, and I kept in my original sketch of this little sketch right here, because I actually read back it again and I was like, oh, I got it wrong. Actually, you customize the plan and then you add a plan to a package. All right. You don't need to be following all the details of this. This is just an example, right? But to be like, ooh, it's not the product that gets customized, it's a plan that gets customized. This actually helps me further define the thing too, to get really clear on what verb goes with what noun and have a process for that. All right. And we actually didn't even need that anyway. That's not even a thing. Okay. Attributes. So, what I want you to do now is when you're inundated with all this complexity, you're parsing out emails and requirements docs and things that stakeholders and subject matter experts are saying, look for the adjectives or also nouns that don't stand alone, that only make sense as like part of something else. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to match the attribute to the object, just like we were matching the CTA to the object and kind of moving things around a little bit. All right. And then we want to find out potential values too, because that, especially from a content design perspective, you're probably thinking also like, oh, yes, labeling of objects, labeling of relationships, labeling of your verbs. What verb makes the most sense? Is it customize? Is it edit? And then with attributes as well, how do we actually break down the values of these attributes to something that makes a whole lot of sense to the user? Okay, so for example, it's got to be crystal clear what the employment status is. Are they active? Are they on leave? Are they furloughed? Are they terminated? Describes their eligibility. So then we need hire dates and waiting periods displayed in a way that makes sense. So if someone is still within a 90-day wait period before the benefits kick in, that should be obvious. Okay, woo, a lot's going on there. And I can use OUX to start breaking this down. Why did it go away? I don't know why that went away. I'm sorry. So I could say an employee has an employee status, and I might start thinking about, okay, what are all the statuses and how do we label it? Is even employment status the right label? And is even employee the right label? Because they could be not employees or they could be part-time contractors that are not employees. So maybe that's not even the right word. But I can think about the employment status. I can say, okay, there's the date the wait period is over or days they're waiting until. And then we've got an insurance product that has a wait period. All right. And then we have this thing. I'm showing off here just a little bit. It's okay if you don't understand this right now, but this is what we call a junction object. It turns out actually that the insurance product has a wait period. So the days that the wait period is over depends on the product, and an employee has multiple products. So I actually need to move those attributes over there and say an employee has many employees insurance products. Okay. Totally cool. That didn't make sense. All right. Do not get everybody say with me. We're not going to get overwhelmed. We're not going to get overwhelmed. Okay. I'm just showing off. This is the kind of 4D chess that you can play with OUX. All right. Just getting the attributes in the right place and be like, oh, these attributes don't even have a home. We need another object. These are attributes on the relationship between these two things. Yeah. Thank you for getting me back at that. Okay, so I'm going to breeze through this real quick because I don't have that much time and I can go forever. So basically, why do we want more understanding faster? Bigger problems, bigger paycheck. You do not want to be struggling with a 20-piece puzzle, okay? You want to be able to say, bring it on for the 1,000-piece puzzle, okay? This makes more meaningful and more fun work. And chronic confusion is stressful too. It is just, you're going to be less stressed with this, which is like reason enough. And just having that unshakable confidence. It feels so good to be like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the problem is. Bring it on. I'm good. And then the business. Oh my gosh, the value to the business. If the UX product content person is like an expert at becoming an expert and they are basically a subject matter expert, like you're super valuable. And just having someone that can craft clarity from the chaos and bring it to everybody. Oh, amazing. Okay, so let's talk about X-ray UX real quick, and then we'll have maybe some time for questions. If we don't have time for questions, because I know there's some announcements, you all know where to find me. LinkedIn, Instagram, all the places. Okay, X-ray UX to make the invisible visible and thus valuable. Okay, so strategy number 5, create a glossary, but create a glossary on steroids. So not only definitions, give examples of the thing, give purpose statements. You can bring in some jobs to be done. What is the job of that object? And really whatever else is helpful. What's the high level content strategy? What are other labels used by different departments? Okay, you can basically structure a dictionary that is more than just definitions, all right? So for example, that eligibility error, okay, I might say, have to give the definition. I might give some examples on like, what are some examples of eligibility errors? Why do we even care about having eligibility error as an object within our system? Why does it matter? Right? This is actually a great question to ask. And what's the context? When does this come up? Ooh, caused by incorrect data entry. That might be interesting follow-up questions there. All right. And you can construct the the template for this however you want. In OUX, we have like our template has like 16 different fields in it, but every project is going to be different. And to have this as something that is public as well that you can share, beautiful thing. What you don't want when you're dealing with a lot of complexity is teams using the same word for different things and different words for the same thing. Makes everything a whole lot harder. And that's like one of the biggest problems I see within companies. Okay, the nested object matrix. All right, strategy number 6. This is like the evil jewel of UX. Like OUXers like love this, but then it's like hard to understand. So it's cool if you don't understand it yet. We're going over it really quick. So basically what we're doing is we're going to take, I showed you those boxes and arrows, right? And little diagrams. That's great. Amazing for when you're just sketching in the margin. But when you have a 10, 12, 30 object system, your boxes and arrows really starts to break down, right? So the nested object matrix comes in. It is completely scalable. We're going to take our objects across the x-axis. We're going to take those same objects down the y-axis. And we are going to explore all the relationships. All right. So this is the same thing as those boxes and arrows, but it's in a grid. That is all that we're doing here. And it is mind melty and it is fun. And it is a puzzle and it helps you systematically figure out all the potential relationships between those objects. It's a beautiful thing. And you can even put multiple relationships within one cell. All right. Our call to action matrix. All right. What we're going to do here is we're going to put our objects along the x-axis again. And this time, we're going to put our roles down the y-axis. So we're going to define our roles. Like for this instance, we might say insurance account managers and the HR managers are main roles. We might have employee as a role too. And then all we do here is we play with the intersections, okay? So we're saying, what are the verbs? What do these people do to these things? And this gives us the foundation for object-oriented user stories that we build when we get deeper into the process, where we can actually explore in depth why somebody does that thing, in what context do they do that thing, what happens when they do that thing. All right, but this basically gives you that audit. CTA matrix. CTA matrix is actually a really great place to start with your team if you already have some objects and roles to start playing with like, okay, what is all the functionality associated with these objects? And then the object map, the 4th strategy that I want to give you within X-Ray UX, strategy number 8 overall. We're going to list all the core content and metadata in each column. All right, so let's take our objects. And basically core content is stuff that makes each object unique. Think like descriptions, IDs, while the pink stuff is your sorts and filters and grouping metadata. All right. And now what we can do is we can pull it all together for our beautiful X-Ray UX. So we can take our nested object matrix, we can stack our core content and metadata, and we can prioritize it. This is like sketching with sticky notes. And we can actually get something like this approved before going into screen design. All right. So if you're working on this with your UX designers and you're actually working on the labeling and the copy and making sure the words, this is all words. It's just color-coded words. So hopefully y'all word nerds are like, yes, this helps me get into the structure early on. So I'm not putting words on screens. The words can come first. Beautiful thing. And then we can put those verbs on top. We got our X-ray. Look at that. All right. So why UI sketches and screen flows are just heavy. They're heavy tools for problem solving. And when you get this approved, you're going to save so much time and so much rework. All right. Getting clear on scope as soon as you possibly can. Also, this is playful. It's flexible. It's color-coded. It's cute. It's pretty. And it can actually really help you have more fun working through the problem. It really does feel like puzzle pieces. And then for the business, this is so much less expensive when you're iterating in sticky notes versus iterating in something high fidelity. Okay. So these core level ups, we talked deeply about complexity processing and X-ray UX. All right. I think this is the future of UX and product design. All right. And I actually kind of feel like it always should have been the core and the heart of what we do. So that is my hot take. That is the tough love in the world that we are working in the the next 5 to 10 years to basically into the future. If you can be the person that just like can take all the chaos and turn it into clarity for everybody and create a shared understanding and ask those amazing questions, get into that x-ray before we go into screens, create an amazing place for people to collaborate on that x-ray and turn it all into really intuitive design, like you're just winning in the long term. All right. We're going to need that for years and years and years to come. We are going to need humans to do that for years and years to come. So, since we didn't get to go over it all, please, I would love to see you on Thursday. I'm so excited about this. I'm doing it twice on Thursday. So hopefully one of those times there's a 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be pretty much the same time as we're meeting now. It is a 90-minute to 2 hour because I go over all the time. I'm going to take my freaking time with it. It's completely free, and that is on March 27th on Thursday. So I hope y'all can make it. And I think we have a little bit of time for questions. Right, Angus?
We do. Thanks so much, Sophia.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
amazing as always. So I think what's been going on in the chat is a lot of light bulbs going off for people, and a lot of people realizing that this is a way of kind of connecting different parts of our practice as for those of us who are content people. So in particular, it's making a connection between the kind of the content modeling side of what we do, so the more structural side, and the content design side, that kind of user focus side, and making sure that when we're building these systems, which we often have to do, we often have to like build a content model for a content management system. Those systems become much more powerful if we can make them actually make sense for users, not just for the business. So I think what we're going to do is actually have another session, organize another session where we can talk a bit more about how we do OOUX in content, because I think there's a lot we can talk about with that. So that's probably one. When I first asked Sophia to come and talk, Sophia said to me, "Well, why don't you do the talk? Because you're a certified strategist." And I sort of said, "Well, I could, but we want to get you because you're a superstar." But I think this is probably one that I can do. So yeah, I think there's a certain number of questions that we'll probably put off until a later session, but lots of people are really interested in hearing more about that. So yeah, I think it's a great sign that this is resonating with people. So I do want to just raise a couple of questions that people have asked. There was a
Yeah.
great one from Jai really early on, which might not seem like it has much to do with OUX, but I think it actually does. And that is how, so Jai is struggling with estimating on UX research and working out. So UX research often has overruns or goes down too many rabbit holes that don't need to be gone down. How does OOUX help with that, Sophia?
Oh my gosh, just finding out your unknown unknowns. I feel
Yeah.
like OUX is such an amazing tool for coming in with a scalpel. So you might have that very, very early research of like, what is the problem? Who are our users, right? But usually, like after you kind of get that really high level research, you need to go in with like really specific questions. And this process is going to help you surface those questions. An example that I give all the time that was one that came up that we had to pop back to research when I was working for a doctor scheduling system was what they had in the system is they had location as metadata. And then it turned out, like through one little thing in a user interview, I was like, it looks like this doctor moves to multiple locations. Like, and they had this whole hack for when a doctor had multiple locations. So I went back to the user research and I was like, okay, let me talk to doctors about how they move locations. Like, and do they have different schedules at different locations? Right. So, like, it's not just being able to add multiple locations. We actually need to say, at these different locations, different doctors have different schedules. So it helped me get into the complexity and then like really dig in and have 20-30 minute conversations with doctors specifically about how they move locations and how just that relationship between the doctor and the location. So it really does. I mean, that kind of gauntlet that just like you could even get to the nested object matrix and be like, a doctor has one location. maybe question mark. And then your nested object matrix is just going to be covered with question marks. And then you can bring those back and your CTA matrix too. And so you can actually go through a quick 1-day version of this. If you spend 6 hours going through the ORCA, imagine the list of questions, and then you can prioritize those questions. That's your user research, like a freaking scalpel getting in there.
Fantastic. I think I'm going to ask one more, and then we'll do some announcements. Sophia, if you do have time to hang around a bit afterwards, we can sort of hang around for as long as
Sure.
as long as people want to. But maybe just one more question first. Jules asked a couple of questions. I'm going to pick one, which I know comes up a lot, which is the relationship between Orca and design systems, or using Orca for design systems. And I know you have thoughts on that. So yeah, would you like
Yeah.
to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So I will just quote Brad Frost on this because I have the privilege of working with Brad Frost on a project before. And basically from his mouth, this is a perfect corollary. So basically, while your design system gives you your systems of components, which is your packaging, all right, OUX gives you your system of concepts, the conceptual models that underlay it. All right. So many design systems, I will quote Dan Mall as well. Dan Mall says, so many design systems. He said this on my podcast. It's like a box of IKEA parts with no instructions. And so OAUX can come in and give you the instructions. Here's how we put these things together in context. One thing that we talk about, what I'll talk about on Thursday, is the concept of masked objects. This is where we have a card and we have our little card and anything can go in it. And it's got a little picture, it's got a little thing, it's got a little eyebrow text, and it's got a little blah, blah, blah at the bottom. All right. And anything can go in it. And then what you end up with is you end up with a plan, a package, an employee, a eligibility error, all using that same packaging. And then you have different things, semantically different things that look exactly the same. That is consistency working against you. Okay, so you want consistency to work for you. And we'll talk about that on how we can get consistency to work for you. We'll talk about that on Thursday, but we don't want our design system to be non-specific. It needs to be specific and it needs to be semantic.
Fantastic. So I'm going to post that link to the event that Sophia's running on Thursday into the chat again, in case anyone missed it. There are 2 times, and it looks like, from what I can work out, it looks like one of the times is going to be Australia friendly because it's at 6 p.m. your time, which is kind of now. So it's around 9 our time, which is fantastic. Thanks for doing that, Sophia.
Yeah.
I remember during the certification training, the kind of office hours were always about 2 a.m. our time, and I think I made it to 1.
You're a real trooper.
Yeah.
That one
Anyway,
time.
yeah, yep. It's hard when we have
Maybe
things like time
was
zones.
Dan making it? Dan was making it to the.
Probably Dan was. Dan was much more diligent than me. Great. So we'll just do a few quick announcements. So I know Elle Garrity has put some announcements in the chat about some training and events that she's running. So Elle's events are always super worthwhile. And in fact, I think this is the next slide. In fact, Elle is going to be our speaker at our next meetup. So for those of you who don't know Elle, she's the founder of the Sydney Content Strategy Meetup. She's absolutely fabulous, and she's going to be talking to us about content management on the 30th of April. So don't miss that one. We do have a YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to that. This talk is going to be going up next week, but it will be going up. In the meantime, yeah, please encourage anyone to sign up for Sophia's training on it's Thursday. It's the 27th your time, which I think it'll make it Friday morning our time. But yeah, this talk will be up next week. The training that we do on behalf of Content Design London, McGee and I are actually doing a course tomorrow, which is probably a bit too late to sign up for, but the Content Design Fundamentals course, the next one coming up is on the 22nd and 23rd of May. So you can have a look at our website for details on those. And I think that's pretty much all the announcements. So is there anything in the chat Lauren or Emma, is there anything important in the chat that I've missed? Because I haven't really been able to keep an eye on the
Not
chat.
not for announcements, but Sophia's picked up
Yeah.
a question she'd really like to talk about.
Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, so obviously this is our hour, and lots of people have already needed to drop off. If you do need to go back to work, then it's been great to see you, but we will hang around with Sophia for a little bit longer. So what's the question that Sophia wants to talk about?
Yeah,
So,
I want to get to Matt's question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to ask you if you wanted to just leap in. So you go ahead.
Yeah, and if anybody else, and I also have another one that I want to talk Kate's question, and if I missed another one, you just want to like pop it down at the bottom, I'll stay and answer all y'all's questions. So Matt asked a spicy question that I like. Have you encountered any valid arguments that challenge the philosophy? I want to talk about, yeah. Oh, that's my part. I want to talk about this. Of course, yeah. Lots of stuff that challenges, and I always have a rebuttal to it all. So the big one that I hear is, how does this work with Agile? This seems like something that's like for holistic design, like, what if you're just in this tiny little box in this little feature factory and you're being asked to design half a page or something like that? So what I say is OUX can definitely do that. I have OUXed a page. I have OUXed a piece of a thing. What OUX will help you do, though, is help you push that box just a little bit. It will show you the weak spots of the box that you are in. The little Agile box that you've been put in can have cracks. All right. And so you can say, ooh, this silo is really dangerous because this thing connects to that thing over there. And now I know it. And I know I can go talk to those people. All right. I can start being the one to break down that silo. I can start being the one to ask the questions, to say, like, ooh, well, have we thought about this? Because this is all connected, right? And then we know the joke that our users are the only one that have a holistic view of our experience. Nobody in the company has a holistic view, just our users. So if we can be the ones to start challenging that, because I will say Agile needs to be challenged. I don't think it works great in its current iteration. I think, well, technology still sucks. Okay. So we haven't figured this out yet. So that's one of them. Another one that I get, another objection that I get a lot is, this sound like it's object centered, or it sounds like very technical. Another question that like kind of piggybacks on this was the one about backend experiences. Like, yeah, you're designing the database. So developers love this. Richard Gower has been here. Hi, Richard. This is a great way to design a database. Now, a developer will probably have lots more objects. It'll be a lot more complicated. I usually say the difference here is that, like, we're really focused on the user-facing objects. There's probably gonna be more back-end objects, but totally. I build in Notion, I build in Airtable, I build in Webflow. Like, I'm not a developer, but I love creating a CMS. And I'm a big Notion nerd. And if I'm building a system in Notion, I use OAUX first to basically say, like, how are all these things? Because I might have 6 or 7 databases in just a simple system, because I want to connect it all. It takes me an hour or something to just sketch it out. It might just be on a little piece of paper with some highlighters. Or you could, I mean, developers, this is how OAUX grew up, was me working with developers. I was a UX team of one as a consultant. I finally went out on my own in 2014, and I just worked for startups. And all those startups in Atlanta, just a bunch of engineering dudes. And Sophia, drop it in there. And they were like, this is awesome because this works with how we think. And there's a lot less of that UX theater that they had gotten burned by before. And as a startup, you need things to be cheap and fast and work with the developers. So, but for the rebuttal side of that, or the pushback of, like, this doesn't sound user-centered, this sounds very technical, my pushback to that is, this is the most user-centered you could be, because humans are object-oriented. I've got some articles, like I said, on Medium. I can, if you just scroll down at Medium, there's one called The Object-Oriented User. But what I will say is, if we, like, the best argument for this is when we think about kids and language, all those first words are all nouns. nouns are so much easier to understand. So we default to the nouns. Nouns are less abstract and concrete nouns. So when kids learn to understand their world, when they learn language, and this is even true for verb heavy languages. I got another article called Don't Dead Him, which is about kids and language. It's very, very interesting. So it's incredibly user centered. It's icing on the cake that it helps with working with developers too.
Yeah, and I've been working with some a client, some of whom are here at a health insurance fund, and that one of the magic things that happens with OUX is when you actually find the developer, and sometimes it's like one person in the organization who has all the knowledge, but is also sort of really interested in making things better for users. When you sort of find that person, OUX is such a fantastic way of developing that, building those bridges between the front end of the experience and the back end.
It will definitely help reduce tech debt and UX debt as well when you can kind of align those and you can get the developers in early. One of those benefits that I kind of glossed over was this fact that, like, if you're both working from from an object map, from that X-ray, then screen design or detailed copywriting can happen in like a parallel track with development. So they can be working on the database, they can be working on APIs, they can be working on data normalization while you're working on design side. And so you can be kind of singing from the same sheet of music and not developers aren't like waiting around for screens.
Yep.
So.
Oh, great questions just popped up from Alana, which I know you also have thoughts on, Sophia. Can you use the methodology to analyze something non-tech related, e.g. building a service or an event?
Yeah. Totally. You're laughing because you're like, yeah.
It's just,
I've OUX'd my inner world. Me and Karen Huell have talked about on the podcast about OUXing therapy. I'm OUXing shadow work right now and internal family systems. I OUX'd the book that I'm writing. You can OUX documents, you can OUX project management systems, you can definitely OUX services. For sure. Actually, it's a beautiful, I don't know why you wouldn't. What's the word? I'm like blanking on the word. VR. It's all AI right now. We haven't been talking about VR. Cornell Hillman's book, UX for XR, he has a whole chapter on OUX and using OUX for XR, virtual reality, augmented reality, because it's objects. Right. We're like looping back around to like the physical digital world, and definitely designing for AI. We could definitely use, I have a whole mini course on using OUX to enhance or using AI to enhance the OUX process, and then using OUX to innovate within AI and figure out places where AI makes a whole lot of sense and work through the ethics of AI as well using OUX. Yes, you can use it for lots of. There's one thing you can't really use it for, and that is something like, let's see, like like an app like this. Like a compass or a calculator or something that's like very much just a tool. There's no databases behind it. It literally, like, this is just all UI. So I wouldn't use OUX for something like this, but that's literally the only thing that I would use it for. If it has any level of complexity, go for it.
I think from a content point of view, there are examples of content that really does need to be bespoke and doesn't necessarily have a repeatable structure or fit into a system of objects, but the amount of that content is less than we usually tend to assume. We build so many websites that are just pages, and we don't think about what the pages actually are. Like, what are these pages that we're creating doing for people? And if we can, even if we're not working with existing concrete objects, if we can think about the pages that we're writing as, we want to communicate something to the user about what type of thing this is, not just what it's not just what it's about. So is this a guide? Is this about how to do something? Is this an explainer? Is it explaining a concept to people? Is it is it a product? Is it whatever? Is it a news article? And making that really obvious to people, so people don't spend time scratching their heads about, I don't even know what this piece of content is and what it's supposed to be doing for me. So that's something I think we found OUX type thinking really helpful for, is actually trying to nounify the things that might not be intrinsically, there's not necessarily real world objects, but we want to make it look like look as close to that as we can. Give them that sense of tangibility, and you almost could reach out and touch this thing, and it looks like other things that are similar to it. So that's that's from a content point of view. Things that we assume OUX might not be relevant for, we actually find out when we do a bit more digging that it really is.
Yeah, I'm really excited for. I think there's a lot of folks like yourself, Angus, and I know that there's some other names in the OUX world of content strategists and content designers that are sort of leading, like, okay, this is how it's applied in the content design world, and I just think that's gonna be it's a whole other thing. There needs to be a whole other course on that specifically for content designers. So yeah. Let's talk about it, or I'll get you all together.
We will talk more. Yeah.
That should not be me creating that. That needs to be you or Gladys or Karen, and folks that just get really excited about this, but then see how, like, ooh, this is how it could be applied. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to oh, sorry. Is there a...
I was just going to say, last chance, if anybody has any other questions. It looks like the questions have kind of died off, but we can close it up if you're ready to close it up. I'm sure you got to get on with your days. But feel free. Also, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Sophia Prater on LinkedIn. Also, I'm doing things on Instagram at Sophia VUX. So feel free to ask any questions there. And I hope to see you on Thursday.
Amazing. So it definitely won't be the last we talk about OUX in this meetup. So stay tuned on that. It's definitely resonated with a lot of people. So thanks so much for coming, Sophia.
Beautiful.
We had I think we had 95 people at the high point. So so that's great. That's
wonderful. Thanks everybody for showing up, and there's so many things that you have to do. So spending time here and listening to me, it's a huge honor. So thank you so much.
Wonderful, and good luck for your event later in the week. And just encourage people to sign up for that if they have the time in their day. But I think you said it's going to be recorded, even if you can't make the live event. Is that right?
Come for that energy, though. You know I'm going to bring it. Come for that energy in the Q&A, and then it'll just sit in your inbox if you don't come. Let's be real; it'll just sit in your inbox. You won't do it. Maybe you will.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks again, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. See you next month.